Part 3 of our weightlifting, or my weightlifting, it's ours. We're doing this together. Weightlifting series, Olympic style weightlifting. Working through the snatch. I started this series 2 videos ago, less the 3 parts. Working from the top down method, which is a very common method to learn lifting. You'll see some nuances. I hate that word, but it's the word of the decade. So nuances in some of the technique. I'll talk about those today. But let's get into this 3rd video. If you haven't watched the other 2, I encourage you to do so. Looking at the pocket position and the below the knee position, and then from the floor. And side note, I'm reading through this book right now. If those of you that are into the world of weightlifting, you know Glenn Penley, who passed away, has it been 2 or 3 years ago now, maybe more, I can't remember for sure, but I learned a lot from him. Not directly, I never met Coach Penley. I've seen him at meets, etc., but I never really met him. But his old videos on how to snatch and how to clean, they reinforced a lot of things I had learned already in the past. And so I highly recommend you go back and look at those videos. Basically, I'm doing some of the same things he did. I just don't have Donnie Schenkel and John North in the background demonstrating. You have me, the old fat guy with terrible shoulder mobility. But hopefully you enjoy this video. You've enjoyed this series so far. And we're working from the floor right now. So the 3 positions, I mentioned Penley because these are the 3 positions he commonly used, and there is some different ways of thinking about what's called the pocket position. I think are more helpful with the clean, and so we'll look at that when we get to the clean. But let's go through from the floor position. So again, if you haven't watched the videos, go back and watch the pocket. Go back and watch the below the knee position because it's important. Obviously, if you don't know the sequence, then what I'm talking about here won't make a whole lot of sense. You might find some of you lifting a while that these are the positions you have a hard time with off the floor, perhaps. And we'll talk about that. Maybe this video can be a standalone for you. All right, so let's get into the video. So let's look at the video. And again, if you haven't watched the videos prior, make sure you go back and view those. Let me turn the sound off here. I was listening to the Braveheart speech in the background. You got to love that speech, right? And so backing up for just a second, just to remind those of you that may not watched it, okay, starting in the position here, I'm in my snatch grip. Again, how I determine that grip width is in the other videos. Go check those out. I don't know how many times. I'll try not to say that too much, but I'm going to start with the gorilla arms, which remember is pointing the knuckles down, and in so doing, pointing the elbow straight out. Notice the shoulders, though, we get into that forward position. So here I'm going to do bro lats. Okay, so just like the bros walking around, and pull the shoulder blades down and back. Now, again, I have terrible shoulder mobility. If you do as well, you need to work on that. I don't. That's I teach now. I don't snatch very much, so I can do this. But obviously with weightlifters, that when you pull back in the lat position, notice how my elbows went back there. We want to avoid that. We want to make sure the elbows, as much as possible, are still pointing off to the sides. I think I tried to correct this later on. Okay, and so again, that's just going through that position, snatch grip. Again, elbows. See, I tried to fix it right there. If you noticed, I realized that I had lost some of that internal rotation when I set up, and so I tried to reset as much as I could without losing my lat. Now notice, just a reminder, I don't want any trap tension here. Obviously the traps are on, but I'm not trying to hold the tension in my traps. It's sitting down and back, and that'll raise the chest up. Okay, all these small things are things like the grip. Again, you're not gonna be able to hold the bar that way. It's gonna come uncurled, but the idea of trying to hold it that way is going to tell the brain, keep the bar close. And when we use that cue, keep the bar close, these are the things that do it, is getting the elbows in the right position, because when they break high instead of back. The bar won't loop, right? We're gonna pull it high. Okay, again, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on those things because we've talked about in other videos. Now, what we didn't talk about in other videos, this is the below the knee position, okay? And so I rotate it over here, and I'm way over the bar, and that's okay. I'm exaggerating this, okay, because I've turned this gear, my hips. So when I go to the below knee position, which is video 2, okay, I'm getting just hip, 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 right? Notice my shins are vertical. They're back a little bit here, but I'm in the back of my foot here as well. Now, as I go to the floor, as I move to this position, the knees are going to come forward, and my weight is going to shift to the middle of my foot, okay? Now, I'm a big old torso man, a big fat and elastic person, and so you can see a little arc in my back here, okay? And this is something this is just the way I'm built. This is something I need to work on. This is when my shoulder mobility sucks, okay? And so you'll see most athletes, and I'm not an athlete, as arguably I never was, but they'll get a little arc in their back here, right? And that's from pulling that bro lat in. This is so important when we start to pull bars off the floor, which I'll talk about in the next video, is that you set up now on the floor. And so getting a routine where you gorilla arm in, bro lat in, and raise the chest while being under balance and having that correct position. I'll talk about where to put the stick, bar, and all that in the next video, is going to be important. But just keep in mind, my back, this is arched for me, right? This is that kind of hyperextended position for me. I'm trying really hard, right? You can see a little bit of my shirt give because I'm trying to create that tension and buttress against the bar. Now, again, balance is in the middle of the foot. I have the shin on, the bar on my shins here just because it's a stick. When we actually lift with the bar, we don't want it on our shin. We want it close, but we don't want shin. So I always kind of use this silly cue, bloody thighs, not bloody shins, meaning I want the bar, it can make some contact with the thigh. There's a reason that you have, a uni that has a protection. If you've ever been to have a good bar, it'll cheese grater your legs. And so, that's okay. So, depending, but it's okay. It means the bar's close when it's moving up the thigh, but we don't want to, rake in the shin. Okay. We don't want bloody shins. Okay. All right. So down here, things I'm looking for, and the camera angle is not that great, but, the stick should be right in my shoulder socket. If you have big delts, unlike me, if you have gigantic delts, I'm not talking about the delt. Okay. What we're looking at is where the actual shoulder socket is. Should be in relation to that stick, not behind. What's very common when people lift, when I work with lifters that are by themselves for a long period of time, they'll start, I call it taking a dump in the woods. If you know what that means, you've never been camping, but you start dropping the hips, okay? Now, everybody's built a little different. Some people might have almost a parallel squat-looking stance, depending on if you have a really long torso, right, and short legs and long arms, you might be able to do that. But the point is that you don't have your butt so far down that your shoulders are behind the bar. You also don't want it so high that your shoulder's in front of the bar. And we don't want to pull flat back. Notice I have this V here. And so as I start to rise, I don't want to see a flat back here. However, I've worked with athletes who have super long legs and tiny torsos. Make great distance runners, but they decided to do weightlifting. They are going to struggle and hit that flat back a little easier. You have to be careful. I'm not saying do flat back, but you might see some people have a different angle. You can see this in some of the international lifters that have a different build. You're going to have nuanced, I don't like that word, but it is what it is, and flatter back, okay? So just realize that the lats protect the lower back. So even if somebody's built like that, they're going to have to make an extra case for strong lats, an extra case to set into the bro lat to protect the lower back, okay? Now, unlike the second pull where it was all hip dominant, this rise here is all knee dominant, okay? So this is all knees, knees, knees. This, as I clear, eventually this will be hip, hip, hip. So knees, 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 hip, 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 okay? All right, so down here at the bottom, shoulder above bar, and if you're by yourself, film yourself, right? Just film one off the side. Make sure you're right on the bar tip, unlike my terrible camera angle here, so you can actually see if you're in the right position. That'll help you. Like, I don't want anybody to watch me. Well, film yourself, okay? I'll talk about where the bar ends up on the feet. Most of the times, the bar is right on top of where your shoelaces. I'm lifting my hey dudes. Don't do that. I'm an old fat guy that teaches weightlifting. I don't do it anymore. At least, well, we'll see. But anyway, above the shoe top, right? Usually where the laces are, when eventually you'll set up on the bar, that's where it'll end up being, and the shins will go to the bar. It depends how big, how long your legs are. As I rise, though, okay, we want to get the shin back to vertical. All right, some people call this sweeping the bar. This is often called the first pull, right? And then we get on the knee and we talk about the scoop at no knee bend. We don't need to worry about that because we just do it naturally. But you should be over in front. Now I'm exaggerating a little bit, and again, the angle here. Some people like shoulders over the bar more, like coaches. Some people's build dictates that, okay? But optimally, okay, is you still maintain that same relationship with the bar. With the bar is right in that shoulder socket, all right? You don't start rotating up early. If you don't get your knees out of the way, the things that happen, the bar is going to loop around your knee, and you're going to skin up your shins, okay? So you got to push shins back to vertical. That also creates the bowstring. So I talked about this before, pulling the bowstring back and let the arrow go. This is the bowstring. You've pulled the bowstring back, and then when you let it go, when the hips let go, now you have some tension. If you keep the knees bent, these hamstrings don't gather the tension. The glutes don't gather as much tension. Certainly the hamstrings do not with that bent knee position. So practicing getting to this vertical shin is really important without scraping the shin, okay? Maintaining my good lat position as I do this, all right? So drive these back. My weight now is going to be more in the back of the foot. I'm not talking about the heel, in the back of the foot. I'm still on balance. My big toe, you'll see in the front how gnarly my right foot is, but my big toe is still down, right? We want to make sure those big toes stay down. As you rise, a good cue to think of is pushing the ground away. Stay in the middle of the foot on the way up so you can use the quads to push, okay? And then when we get here, then we're going to use more of the glute. Now, when I usually teach the snatch here, it sounded weird. It sounded like a Ben Stiller video. When I teach the snatch here, anyway, you rotate up to the pocket just to get the feeling of how tall it should be. Now, a lot of people stop here, not because they're trying to, but just because they think they're all the way up. Exaggerate, okay, getting the hip to the bar, all right? I'm not trying to push the bar away. I'm just standing up tall, much like you would have when you do a regular deadlift, right? You have the glutes engaged. I'm not pushing the bar away. I don't want to bounce the stick away from me, okay? I just want to stand tall with it, with the weight in the back of my foot still. As you rise now, be cognizant that your knees are still bent. It's a common error to just stand up, right? We don't want that because the knees aren't bent yet. We haven't launched yet. We just got back to the launch position. Knees went back. Okay, I'm going to rotate up. All right. And then I go back down. You can snatch out of that then. So knees go back. Okay, I'm sorry my video is so choppy. Rotate up, and then I'm going to snatch. All right. Catch the stick with my horrible mobility and the boiler hanging out the front. All right. But that's a good drill to do to make sure I wouldn't launch too quick. In other words, don't go full speed off the floor yet. Okay, make sure you get back to this position. Feel the pattern. Remember, you have to feel things in order for your body to understand them. Think of it as imprinting. You're making a map, okay, in your brain about what this movement looks like. And if you go too fast, meaning like you go full speed from here, what typically happens is most people pull the stick right off the knee, and so the stick will be out here. Okay, you have to get to that feeling of pushing these back and then rotating up. And even athletes that I've been coaching for a long time, this is something we have to work on with many athletes, is being patient around the knee. Get above the knee before you start really looking at launching. Okay, because if you go too early, then the stick's going to be too far away. And so now I'm going to try to put it all together, see how crappy this is. Knees go back. Okay, I lost the video because I was so fast it just skipped a whole bunch of frames. All right. But I think you get the idea. All right, front here, forgive my wonky foot. Don't lift in hey dudes, right? Don't roll your ankle playing college football 15 times. Anyway, out in front, okay? Again, sorry about that. Everybody's going to be a little bit different, but feet in, knees out, all right? Now, you can see with this camera angle here, and just because my jacked up body, it's optimal, okay? Optimal to have the knees just touching the inside of the forearm. Okay. Now, if somebody is, depending on their built, this may not be possible or maybe uncomfortable. You have to experiment with this. At the worst, okay, is the feet. If somebody has longer legs, they can move their feet out in a wider stance, but make sure that the feet never get outside the hands, obviously, and the knees never get inside the feet. All right. So at the worst, I could stack my foot straight underneath my knee, but I would not want my foot. I've seen this, right? Where, it gets lazy and knees are in and then foot is out. Knee is in, foot is out. We don't want that. Okay. If anything, feet in, knees out. All right. Now, what's happening when you do this, why you want to have this bow, if you ever notice a lot of good weightlifters are bow-legged, okay, or varus. All right. If you look from the side view, if I would if I'd bring my knees in, that would push my knees over the bar more. So by pushing my knees open, okay, I actually make my legs shorter. All right, I should have filmed this to show you this, but you can try it. Film it yourself. If I push my knees together, my legs will be out here. Well, not that much, but they'll be out here. By opening the knee and pushing to the inside of my forearm, I actually make my legs shorter. Okay, I also will get more glute involvement. All right, especially in the glute med area, I should get more of my complete glute complex. How's that? As I drive the bar up. Okay. And so, again, this is the same thing we just did with the side. Knees go back. I'm on the outside of my feet a little bit here. Again, this is my busted foot, so, just ignore that. But I'm on the back of my foot. Toes should be down. Again, this is just wonky leg me. But toes should still be stapled to the floor, all right? Even though my weight is back, I'm trying to maintain my elbow position. I should have got a model to do this, right? This just looks terrible, all right? But you get the idea. Let's put it this way. If you can understand what I'm showing you, and a lot of you have mobility challenges anyway that, they say when you model, right, use somebody that's more realistic, right? So I'm not doing some Olympian doing this. Maybe it'll impact you a little more, okay? And so, again, getting tall here. Make sure you rotate all the way up. Knees are still bent, all right? You might find you're on the outside of the foot a little bit, just like I am. But, again, make sure that big toe is stapled to the floor, even if you're back in the foot. Okay, now I'm going to do a pause, and then I'm going to snatch it, all right? Obviously, I was a little peg-legged here. I didn't really pull very hard through my feet. All right, and get to extension. We talked about how awful my shoulder mobility is. Okay, so no comment on that. Obviously, if you look like this in your shoulders when you snatch and your elbows are pointed back towards the wall, you're too tight. You need to do some roll press. Right, I talked about that before. Putting bar on your back, roll press. See, look at the other videos for that. Okay, and then I'll do a really ugly snatch here with the stick. Okay, and I didn't really let my feet come on that one. Did more of a catapult, just kind of get away with it. So I'm pointing out my errors, so you don't think that's how you should do it. What I'm trying to get at, though, how the whole thing should look, is the important points from the floor. Okay, so from the front view, knees out, feet in. At the worst, feet under knees. Okay, knees go back on the way up. Okay, it's all knee driven. You sweep the bar back. Okay, so your shoulders, back of the shoulders above the bar and the shoulder joint. Foot is balanced. Push the ground away. Use the quads. Shins are vertical. All right, and now I'm going to rotate up. And some people use the power position, so they'll stop right here. So they'll go from the floor to that. That's a fine way to teach too. I don't have a problem. I mean, great, wonderful. This is just the way I like to teach the snatch, because I think it gets people in this idea of getting taller, because you're going to lean back in the snatch. You might not in the clean, depending on your style, how big you are. You might just get really tall, but you might not lean back like you will in the snatch. You have to make way for the bar when you snatch it because it's going over your head. Okay. All right. So from the floor again, shins are vertical. And again, this is what people call the power position. Usually the knees back, still in a vertical position. Right, when this is exaggerated. And again, I think that's a great way to teach it as well. I've done that before in the past. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. Fantastic. Okay, I like the pocket and the snatch, like I mentioned, and then from here, pull and catch. Okay, so balance, shin position, bar position in relation to the shoulder. Obviously, keeping the positions we started about at the beginning, about the lats and etc. Okay, clearing the knee. Okay, being patient around the knee. If you find you're pushing the bar out all the time and you're not even, you should feel the bar, remember, make contact on the hip. If that's not happening, look and make sure you're not pulling the bar off the knee instead of letting it travel to the hip. If you're pushing the bar out, make sure you're not pulling the elbow back, or the shoulder and the shrug is back and the elbow's back, and now you're creating a loop. All right, you're creating a loop here. I've seen the B pattern, which is when somebody pulls, the bar comes here, right, as it clears the knee, and then as it hits the hip, it comes back out again. So you have this pattern. That's obviously not something we're looking for. We want a subtle S. All right, a subtle S. If anything, from the few studies we have, well, not a few, there's some studies. One of the better ones I've seen in the research on the bar path, I wouldn't get overly obsessed with this, other than to make sure the bar is not traveling, especially not forward in the horizontal very much at all. Okay, because it's going to come out a little bit as you make contact with the hip, but it should travel back, so that the hook, if we're going to draw a hook, will look a little bit more back. I'm exaggerating a little bit. Okay, obviously this is a miss. This is okay. Right, I'm talking about with the bar path from the floor. This would be even a little better. This would obviously be ridiculous. Okay, I've seen that though. If you look at some of the smaller Japanese lifters, 10 years ago maybe, they would purposely lean back against the bar and hop a big step. You'll see some of these technique variants and think, oh, should I try that? No, you shouldn't. Okay, learn how to do it this way, because those athletes, we refine that, and they're trying to leverage, Olympic level weights with their body size, so they have a very different thing going on. When you learn something, learn the basics here. Learn them first, then you can adjust them as you go, as you feel like. And have athletes that have adjusted their technique on their own, and with my help and guidance at times, I encourage my athletes within reason to explore some variants. Like try the feet out a little bit, try your grip a little bit wider, right? If you have long arms, try to go a little wider. If you're not ready yet for that first, when you start lifting, fine, but over time you can try to do it. Now, there's a point where you have to say, okay, we're not talking about changing things every week. I'm saying you've been lifting for a while, like the basics, for 6 months. And now you're like, man, let me try this finger, one finger width wider on the grip on the clean. I think that might be more beneficial with my arm length. So let's try it. Oh, I really like that. Okay, great. Right? If you watch athletes in their jerk grip, you'll notice that their grip over time seems to migrate, right? From when they first started to, it gets a little bit wider, especially if you've seen the Colombians lift weights, their grips are enormously wide. It's a great tactic biomechanically, because shorter arms means the bar has to go less distance. The downside is it's easier to break an elbow. I'm saying break an elbow, I don't mean like shatter it and injure it. I'm talking about the elbow actually bend. It's easier for the elbow to bend. I have a lifter that has long arms, and he has struggled with that bend, but he also has the benefit of, right, the bar doesn't have to go very far. So that's really helpful for him with his longer arms. So again, these are things you have to figure out. I have another long arm athlete that he didn't like being wide, so he stayed narrow. He had a great drive. These are things you can play with, and there is no right answer over time. But there are some basics that need to be built first before you start to make those nuances. Don't fall for the YouTube weightlifting, libraries. There's nothing wrong with looking at things, but I've seen athletes that do this. Well, I saw this video of this Russian athlete doing this. Well, that's a Russian athlete who's been lifting for 15 years. Okay, and if we put all the drug use aside and everything else, if we just look at what's working for them in terms of technique, don't just copy them. Okay, don't just copy them right away. If there's some basics there, absolutely. But the smaller, again, I'm going to use this word, nuanced things, the smaller things, the grip you can't do yet, the shoulder mobility you don't have, the arm length that doesn't look like his or hers, don't copy those techniques. Okay, at least don't try to do it yet. Get the basics down first. And I'm talking at least 6 months. I always say, it's going to take you a year to be able to pick up the bar and start moving around with some confidence and competency. It'll take you 3 years to figure out if you're any good. Because if depending on where you start, it's going to take a while. All right, so embrace the process. This is a process sport. I always tell the weightlifters that do this. There's a reason when we had the club was really hopping, there was at the max 15 of them training instead of 150. It's because the sport is hard. I have a big bushel full of full of waivers that of people that have tried the sport, and maybe I'm just a terrible coach. That's part of the problem, maybe. But these are people who tried it and realized this is harder than I thought, and we're just working with a stick. Okay, it's a hard sport. You got to love it. You got to love the process. So it's like track or one of these other sports that you have to enjoy training. All right, sorry, I got sidebarred a little bit, but I hope that helps. This is off the floor, right? Getting into this good position, and then you can review the other videos, what to do from below the knee and from the pocket. The next video, I'll get a barbell and show you what it looks like to set up on it. It's not a lot different, but it is different. Okay, you take these same techniques now, and you're not doing a top down. You're actually doing it from the floor. It just takes a little bit different of a focus and when you set it up. Again, I hope you enjoy these videos. And if you haven't, check out the other ones. Check out my library of other videos. Check out my book, shameless plug. And I'll see you in the next video.